Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Cringy Movie Collection Podcast. First episode of the year, first banger of the year, Flightplan. I was really looking forward to watching this movie.
Yes, I didn't even remember that I haven't watched this movie yet. I thought it was Panic Room.
Okay, we've talked about it before, and you really made it seem like you had already seen it, but...
I'm very good at making it seem that I remember things because I forget everything.
You just thought you might have already seen it because Jodie Foster is in it.
Yes.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about the movie, what we like, what we don't like, and, I don't know, random stuff that we thought about while watching the movie. All right, the movie today is Flightplan with Jodie Foster. It's directed by Robert Schwenke, which sounds pretty German to me. The movie does have a German connection as well. It's set in Berlin. I'm going to just give you a quick summary of what's going on in this movie. Jodie Foster has a daughter, and she used to have a husband, but he fell off a roof and died. And so now she used to work in Berlin, but now they're taking the body of her husband and they're going back to the US by airplane. And obviously she's quite distraught because her husband just died. And
like what she thinks is suicide?
It's unclear. She thinks it's not suicide. But later in the movie, it is suggested to her that maybe it was suicide.
I immediately think that it was suicide.
But she doesn't believe that.
We know that?
Yes, she says it explicitly.
Yeah, but I didn't believe her when she said that explicitly.
That's fine, but she doesn't believe it.
Okay.
So they're going on the plane, and very quickly, Jodie Foster's daughter disappears. And the movie basically turns into the big question, kind of a mystery, of whether or not the daughter was ever there. Jodie Foster goes around and tells, like the flight attendants and all that, like, my daughter is missing. They go through the plane, they try to find her, and they can't find her. There's no trace except a little bunny.
No,
like
it's a teddy bear.
A plush teddy. And a little later, there's also like a little smudge on the window, which she made. But all of those things, like, you don't know if they are actual proof of the daughter's existence. So also for the audience, the question comes, is there an actual daughter, or did we see only what she imagined?
Because this is also helped because she imagined to go with her husband to see,
right,
to identify the body in
the
coffin.
The opening scene of the movie is her going to identify the body, and she is we see her husband kind of sitting with her, suggesting that we see what she imagines.
Yeah.
Yes. It's actually not bad filmmaking. But then it gets bad, in my opinion anyway, because we find out that this whole thing is So first of all, she does have a daughter, and she was kidnapped on the airplane by the air marshal and a flight attendant. They have concocted this plan because Jodie Foster used to work in aviation, and she was one of the engineers that worked on this specific airplane, which is a fictional airplane that's supposed to be the biggest in the world. It's kind of based on the Airbus 380 or the Boeing 747. Like, that's kind of the category of airplane we're thinking of. So she knows the airplane and she knows how to get to the cargo hold. So they use the coffin of her husband to smuggle explosives. And then they want to make it look like Jodie Foster's character, whose name is Kyle.
Because apparently coffins are X-ray resistant, or they are not.
Or they don't get X-rayed or something.
They don't go through the same security.
So they used it to smuggle explosives, and Jodie Foster then supposedly they try to make it look like she is extorting the airline for $50 million or something insane. And that's the story. Jodie Foster manages to persevere in this situation. She takes down the air marshal, who is played by Peter Sarsgaard, who's like appropriately slimy.
Oh yes, it's very slimy.
It's really good as far as the performance goes. But we'll talk about performance in a second. What I want to talk about is what I absolutely hate about this movie. And it's simply this villain's plan. It has many holes. The biggest issue is that they rely on the fact that no one notices that Jodie Foster has a daughter, which is not something crazy. That can happen. But if you're making a plan to get $50 million, you're not relying on that, like just hoping that no one notices.
But it seems that they studied the family a lot because basically the plan started like before they killed the husband just to have a coffin and like have somebody with a motive. Somebody that was not a motive, like somebody that knew the plane.
Is this a given? Is this actually what happens, or is he just suggesting that he did that?
This is what he says, but when he's freaking out at the end.
The air marshal and overall bad guy of the movie claims that he pushed him down, but I don't know if that's true. Like, it might be that he's saying these things to distress her more.
So they were just waiting, like they had a list of people that knew the plane and they were waiting for somebody to have a fatality so they could smuggle.
I would say it's probably the other way around. Like, I mean, again, this is stupid because this plane is stupid. But like, when he dies, she decides to take the body to the US, which is not a given anyway. So the plan probably only comes into effect once you realize the opportunity.
But how did they know about the opportunity if they were not monitoring all the people that...
But they both worked there. So, like, if that's your thing, you keep track of people working at the aviation company.
But these are like so much different departments. They are engineers. One is a flight attendant and the other is a plane marshal. How can they just like... If this is the biggest plane in the world, then the company probably has a lot of employees.
That's an overall problem with the plan. Again.
Yeah.
Like, how can he make sure that he is the air marshal on that specific flight? Is he in charge of the shifts? You know, like, I'm not saying that it's impossible. It's just a lot of, like, how did that work, you know? Like, how does the female accomplice, the stewardess, the air hostess, played by Kate Bean, she has big eyes. How does she is, if you watch the movie, you notice that whenever something strange happens, it happens because of her.
Yeah.
She comes with the facts. She is doing the checks. She's checking the area where the girl is actually hidden so that she can go and say she's not there. So, but how does she make sure that all of those instances, she's the one that happens to, like, be able to make it look that way?
Well, I think that in her like group, she's the most high rank because the younger stewardess that we see, I think that she kind of remembered that there was a girl, but she just gets peer pressured, and I think that the villain flight attendant is like the most authoritarian figure there.
If you're like narratively, if you want to say, look, this is the senior flight attendant and that's why she can control the situation, don't have another flight attendant who's like twice her age. Because there's clearly an older lady that is also an air hostess.
But I think that they have slightly different role there. They're not
the same kind of flight attendant. Fine. I'm just saying, if that's how you want to explain it, don't put other elements in your movie that put that into question. I'm not saying you can't explain it, but it just feels like there's a lot of moving pieces in the air, and we don't need to get everything explained, but because there's so many of them, it feels like it's a plot hole, like they're plot holes. Yes, you don't have to explain everything that happens in any story. But if a lot of unusual things happen, it makes... Because it's a mystery. You're supposed to solve a mystery. And the resolution to it is such a crazy thing that maybe you should have given us a few of the explanations.
This is something that I have some problem... Like, it really seems that they did a very good job in crafting the plot, but then the plane was going down. The plane was landing. They needed the resolution. The time ran out, and they just resolved it. I think this happens
we should
a
maybe
lot
say Jodie Foster blows up the guy.
Yes.
That's how the movie ends. And it feels like something out of an action movie when it wasn't really an action movie.
No.
It was a psychological thriller.
But speaking of the fact, do we really care so much about what the movie then tells us about what actually happened? Because I think that the pleasure that I get from seeing a movie like this is just unknown fact and you don't really know what's happening. You kind of want something to be true, but you think that something else is more reasonable, and you're just like emoting with the character that is confused, and you're enjoying the confusion, and then you just want to know that there is a resolution. But to me, like, it's more to have your resolution.
So you
and
don't
it's
care about a
over.
mystery that has a nonsense resolution.
I'm disappointed, but this doesn't really like taint the movie so much to
Okay.
me, because the movie is more about not knowing than what you end up knowing.
I think it's a fundamental problem. Like, I mean, this is why it's the thing I absolutely hate. It's like this nonsense concoction of a story. Because so think of it this way: if the movie ended, half an hour before it actually ends, would you still have? Oh, that was nice. I ramped up to this mystery and then didn't get a resolution. Like, why can't it just be anything? Then you don't need anything. Then the movie could just end with her
But
not knowing.
you need to stop holding your breath for one reason or another.
Okay.
But
I think you have a very low bar to clear. It's like, yeah, it's like, because I agree that the movie is very competent at building the tension, and that's the main reason why you would watch a movie like this. That's what a thriller is. It should thrill you. But I think it is tainted heavily if then in the end it explains that everything that you've been wondering about, all the kind of intricacies of like, how much could this maybe just be in her mind, and who is all these characters, like what are their motivations, and who of them can be trusted, and all those things, like all of these are not that important
I don't
because
know.
it's like something that is unreasonable.
Maybe it's because I don't really care what they tell me. Like, I enjoy being like that. The movie is very good at making me like be there with her while she's looking for the child and thinking about all the possible scenarios. And then I have all these possible scenarios in my mind, and if I'm not like satisfied with what like the others give to me, like I can just choose mine.
Okay. All
I
right.
don't know. I have many like possibilities.
What do you mean?
Well, of like resolutions that could have happened.
Do you have any that are better than this?
It would turn out to be a very sad movie, but I would have been more surprised if the kid didn't exist.
Yeah. It would make sense, right? Like, we see her walk around with her husband. Why not see her walk around with her dead daughter? Like, in the movie, at some point, it is suggested that maybe her father took her with him to the roof and committed suicide. And if that was what, was the reveal, which it is halfway through the movie, that's the reveal, but it's the fake out.
Yeah.
Maybe if that was the actual plausible explanation, it would have been better.
I think that it would be like, also from a stylistical point of view, it's what you weren't expecting the least. And what it doesn't usually happen in movies. In movies, like the kid's always real, the hero is always right. And just like seeing like a regular person that just imagines things and is going through a tragic time. But this has been tainted to me because there was just one coffin, and so it's like,
but I'm
where's
not-
the other coffin
No,
then?
but the point is, right, like, you could work your way around that. You don't have to make the exact same movie with a different
Yeah.
resolution. You would make the movie work with something a little more reasonable, basically.
Yeah, I
And make
think-
it more of a psychological exploration
Yeah.
of how you deal with grief rather than, like motherhood, essentially, which is what this movie is.
Or there is the other option that what is the thing that Jodie Foster believes, that is there are some terrorists on the plane and they wanna just have bargaining chip against her because she knows the plane. So when they hijack the plane, they need somebody that knows to work for them.
Right.
And this could totally be true. Like nobody believed that as well until she pointed out an Arab guy. Then everybody believed that.
It's interesting how that kind of 9/11 stuff, it turns a lot of people to the side of Jodie Foster.
Yes, immediately.
Who are very annoyed because they have to stay seated and all that because they are looking for the girl. And then she accuses two Arab men of potentially being involved, and suddenly there's a bunch of people that think that they're terrorists.
Yeah, first she was a crazy lady, like that just lost a kid in a tube, and then it's like, oh no, there are Arab terrorists in here.
You know, a thing about that kind of Arab panic moment that I thought was interesting is that when she accuses the two men of being somehow involved because she saw someone similar at the window last night, looking through to hers, she just accuses them, and Peter Skarsgård takes her to the side and goes like, now you're just, being racist. And I think it's interesting because Jodie Foster isn't accusing those people of this because they're Arab or Arabic, but because they look similar to someone they saw. Now that is in a way
that is racist because any kind of Turkish slash Arabic.
She hasn't seen enough Arabic people to distinguish the people well enough in that specific situation. So it is racist, but it's not because she thinks all Arabs are terrorists, which is the more obvious racist element. And she says, I don't care about being politically correct right now. I care about finding my daughter, and I think they're involved. And so, I'm saying it. I think that's an interesting dilemma that we face in life because we don't want to be racist. But sometimes us not wanting to be racist overrides what we actually think is the right thing to do because it would look bad. There's a certain truth to that moment where, look, she's looking for her children. She has a lead. She has something that, while she is wrong about it, that's her best guess at this point. And so she doesn't care about the fact that this looks really bad. And I like that. Let's talk about Jodie Foster.
Yes, this is what I absolutely love about this movie, and there is Jodie Foster in it.
Yeah. Jodie Foster, of course. I mean, this movie very clearly is a Jodie Foster vehicle. I mean, the movie is about her and some of her internal, her character's internal struggles, and they picked a good actress for that.
Oh my gosh, she's amazing. Like what she does with her face when you can see at the beginning that she's immediately panicking because she cannot find her child because she's in distress and she wants to know where her child is. But she also knows, I haven't even checked the old plane yet, so I shouldn't make a scene.
Yeah.
And you can see that she's panicking, but she's trying to keep it together because she knows it's not reasonable yet to
There's a good amount of
overtly
tension,
panic.
and it's tied to her performance for sure.
And you can just see it on her face, like on the lines in her forehead.
I think part of why I have the movie might be that Jodie Foster is in it, because my mom was really enjoyed, I don't know what.
See, Jodie Foster is everybody's favorite.
She was into Jodie Foster, and that made me interested as well in the actress. And I think it's very good.
Did you know? Actually, I think retrospectively that Jodie Foster was my first celebrity crush in general. I was just so in awe of this person. I had some of the movies that she have done as a teenager. There's more family friendly movies, and then when I was a little bit older, I watched Contact.
Yeah.
It's a movie in which she goes to space and she's like an astrophysicist. I just had such a massive crush on her, and I kept rewatching
It's creepy
every
because
movie.
she was a child actress, right, originally.
Yes, and
So you having a big crush on this child is somewhat questionable.
But I haven't watched Taxi Driver until I was not having a crush on her anymore.
What about Freaky Friday?
But she's like a teenager. She's like 16. And
That's
I was
still underage.
But I was like 14.
Okay. So you felt you had a shot.
Yeah. Like she was older than me in the movies in which I watch her.
As much as Jodie Foster carries it, the cast generally is very good, I think. There's no one, not even the child actress, who is not in the movie all that much because she gets kidnapped very quickly.
But they really picked a good child to just be quiet and stay there. And like, okay, good.
It's also, the child gives the impression that she's also distraught, even though she doesn't quite understand what happened to her father. And I think that's great. Like, you don't have to address it, but it comes across anyway, and it's quite
Yeah,
nice.
it's also a good child to be like potentially fake. Like it's a good choice for
Right?
a she's very
child
pale.
that just stands around doing creepily kind of like at the airport. She goes to like a food stand or something like a kiosk, and she just kind of stands there looking at things, and that's how you might imagine your
To be fair, that
fictional
is
child.
mostly how I was as a child.
Absolutely, it's actually that. But I think that parallelism, like you have to have both, right? You have both a surreal quality and the plausibility of it. That's great. Peter Skarsgård, I mentioned. There's also Matt Bomer is in this movie. The guy from White Collar, Neil Caffrey.
Oh my gosh.
He's just a flight attendant, and it's
No,
just
that's a pilot. He's a pilot.
no.
Oh.
That's Sean Bean.
Okay.
Which we're gonna talk now. Sean
yeah.
Bean is in this movie, and I think he got cast kind of as a fake out, as a red herring, because he often plays characters that are evil, and particularly ones like Boromir that aren't evil the entire time. Like he's very good at turning. National Treasure is another example where he's a good guy at the very beginning and very quickly
So
turns
you're
into
just
a bad
expecting
guy.
him to be the bad guy.
And in this movie, I think that works really well because you don't know when the captain, the pilot, comes to talk to Jodie Foster. He has this antagonistic role, but he also is understanding. Like
Even though I never doubt the pilot.
yeah.
No, it's
Neither
the pilot
did I,
is
but
like
I love Sean
too
Bean.
far away, like piloting the plane to plotting something. But this leads to what I absolutely hate about this movie. That's there is a good thing about the movie, but I was shaken by it. Is the sliminess of the two bad people. The flight marshal has this face that you just want to spit on, and it's just like you. And even before it starts, that you just have nothing against this guy. It's just like there is
He's
something.
got his eyes half closed.
Yes, there's
very
something
creepy.
that is really like unsettling, and also the other person has these eyes that almost look like glass, like her face is arranged, and probably like the makeup that they had on enhanced this like.
She's got very big
eerie
eyeliner.
features.
Like her eyes are popping.
And they're so eerie and so unsettling, and I just like, oh my gosh, they make me so uncomfortable.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's not like you suspect them right away.
No, because I'm so like bothered by their appearance that I'm just.
No, but what I mean is like they have these kind of creepy features that other characters don't have in it. So they kind of stand out. Also, they're like, at least Peter Skarsgård is like a named actor, but he is more of an ally at first. At least he pretends to be.
I wasn't expecting the marshal to be in on it. I thought it was the cabin crew.
Yeah. Matt Bomer, maybe.
There is a flight attendant that it's more like on our side from the beginning, like this one, the one that is more sympathetic, and she seems that she's like the outcast of all the others. So it's like, oh, they're all in on it, and this is like the new person that is not in on it yet. So, and I thought that all the flight attendants were like, I don't know.
It's just like a whole conspiracy.
Yes.
Okay. One thing that I really like about this movie and movies like it is that an airplane really lends itself well to a thriller because of the claustrophobia that comes with it. Another movie that I really like is Red Eye, which has the same thing. But something that Flightplan does better is that it has its climax on the plane, whereas sometimes they don't know how to up the ante in this enclosed space. And in this movie, it's all set on this plane, except for a little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end. But the actual thriller part happens on the plane, and it's really used well. There's a scene where she crawls on top of containers in a cargo hold, and it's really scary. Also because Sean Bean just said that like a slightest bit of turbulence and you might die if you're there. So like it's set up that this is dangerous. It looks dangerous. It feels claustrophobic. This movie really uses its setting for narrative purposes. I think that's very good. Maybe it's a little weird that they made this fictional plane that's even bigger than any planes that already exist. Because the bigger you make the plane, the more it feels like you're going through a hotel.
But you also have like more places to look in. Like if it was just a straightforward plane, like a local plane that has 20 rows.
Yeah.
Okay.
But someone was pointing out, this is a little bit like this is more about the design of the mega plane. It's like this is post 9/11, and in one of the bathrooms there's just a shaft you can go into to like get to the cargo hold, like or something. I don't know where. Like there's weird network cables that like it's a little intense, a little silly in terms of design. Then again, it's like it's a hidden thing that only Jodie Foster would know about, so it's okay. But it's still like, you know, it's a cool thing. It's a cool design. I think the plane has this nice vibe. It's lit in all blue, so it feels like it has its identity. And I appreciate how much the passengers get spotlighted. It's in part obviously to make you wonder who might be in on it. But it's also, it just gives it a more alive feeling. Like, you know, a little bit his family with the kids and the guy.
And with the back gets stiffer, but then he can have the strength to be the upper person if he thinks he's an Arabic terrorist.
Yeah, and then you have the Arabic people and all that. It's good.
Yeah, I think I like it. I don't know many mysteries on planes, but one of my favorite books, I'm not a huge Agatha Christie fan, but I really like Murderers on the Orient Express. It's just, I like when all the suspects are locked somewhere. And
it's like a puzzle.
Yes, that's very nice. I liked Con Air.
Con Air, classic airplane thriller mystery.
Steve Buscemi.
Buscemi, yeah. I think this movie, from a technical perspective, it looks really beautiful. The acting is also great. The sound design is fantastic. But something that bothers me is that there are so many like shots, like tracking shots around Jodie Foster, where they just put tracks around her. The camera like, you know, goes around her really fast. It looks like a Michael Bay film sometimes. There's some push zooms as well on like important things, like when she realizes, oh, I should go there, and then the camera just pushes in on something.
I agree with you on the push zoom, but on the round thing, I think that as somebody that had my fair share of panic attacks, it kind of makes it like gives the idea of the panic that you feel like everything is like kind of like closing on you and you cannot really breathe. So
I don't mind using that technique, but it's overused. It's being done too much.
She's in a panic the whole movie.
Yeah, but it draws attention to itself is the problem. So now you're thinking about tracks on the ground and the camera in the room. And like, there's one particular instance where this is the main reason why I'm saying it. At some point, Jodie Foster is talking to someone. I think it might be the captain. And he says something to her. And then the camera is behind her. We cut to the camera being behind her. Before it was just a close-up of the person talking. Then we cut to the camera behind her. And the camera whooshes around her. And then, like, Jodie Foster gives her answer. So there's a whole beat of nothing but camera work happening. And it feels like you're drawing attention to the fact that now there's camera work happening.
I don't know, I was just paying attention to Jodie Foster.
That's nice. You just want to see her hair from behind and from the front.
One of my favorite scenes actually happens on land because at the end she runs out of the plane on fire, carrying her child, and she walks through all the passenger and like. To be like, honestly, nobody believed that she really had the child. Everybody thought that she was delusional. And we also
kind of
thought it a lot
moment.
of it. And it's like the biggest I told you so moment that I ever seen in a movie. It's like
she should hold it up and like point it in all directions. Like, here's the child, like Simba.
Yeah, like that famous scene in which Will Smith points as his wife and on the red carpet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also really like Sean Bean in that final scene, where he comes to apologize, even though he did nothing wrong. You know, like, it makes perfect sense that he would behave the way he does. But he's like, you know, like the bigger man, so to speak, and goes and like apologizes for his.
Yeah, the pilot is very good at like keeping us like viewers grounded, because of course you want like everything has to be done because she needs
Yes.
to find the child, and the pilot is always like, there
Reasonable.
are 423 other people on this plane that I'm responsible for
Yes.
as well as you.
Yeah.
And I always like stop and think that he has a point.
Perfectly reasonable. Flight personnel in this movie, they're all kind of assholes, even the ones that aren't evil. Like, they're like joking about the passengers, and they're like, that's early on they say like, you're allowed to hate you're allowed to hate the passengers.
I think that it's, okay, I'm not the person to ask this question because I would never do well in a job in which you're required to interact with other people. But also, it's just, have you ever been on a plane and you hate your other passenger and like thinks if your job is just being on planes, like with the people, with the
Yes,
children screaming
but-
and everything.
But when you travel and you get on a plane, you get on a plane because you travel, not because this is your job that you chose at some point. Like, flight attendant isn't a menial job that, you just needed a job, so you became a flight attendant. So, like, it's a choice. And so I don't think that if you look at it this way, if this was your job and you saw your job depicted that way, would you be a little upset?
Yes.
This is what I'm kind of getting at. It's a little disrespectful to the profession of flight attendant. Because either you're like an evil manipulating bitch, or you're just kind of like nonchalant about, like you're in a service job and you don't like the people you're servicing. Then why are you doing
Because
this?
people are so unpolite to service people. It's just, I was on a plane
Sometimes,
the
yeah.
other day, and you cannot unlock your seatbelts before the plane took flight. And there was this guy that was just so patronizing to the young flight attendant because he needed to pee. And she was like, I cannot allow you to do that. And it's like, oh. And she had to call like a male flight attendant to hold this guy down because it's just like they don't really get any respect.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that, like, two of the flight attendants are just like using the big search to do something sexual.
Other searching.
Yeah, it's a body search. What's the point of this movie? You have a point? No?
Jodie Foster.
I think there are kind of two things. On the one hand, it is about questioning yourself, right? This movie is about how far are you going to go if you're convinced that something is going on that no one believes you, right? Because the only real reason why she perseveres is because she is not letting everyone convince her of this alternate truth, So I think in a way the point is believe in yourself when it comes to the important things, such as your daughter.
Yeah, I was thinking this before, that how much I admire Kyle, because I would probably very, very more easily just accept the fact that I'm delusional and I should go into an institution because there is no...
Right.
I'm mad now.
It's also nice because it's another movie that doesn't draw attention to the fact that we have a strong woman here. We just have a strong woman here. Like, it doesn't. It's no one is going, oh, but she's a hysterical lady, or like, we don't need.
There is a little bit at some point in the beginning, but it's
Well,
more,
but it's people
more
are not being
hysterical
annoyed.
mom than
It's like a hysterical person.
woman. Yeah.
That's and the other thing that I think might be the point of this is also kind of like motherhood, like the bond between a mother and her child is so strong that it empowers you to do insane things and end up in an action movie, which is like, it's like this classic grand narrative that I don't know how true it is in reality, but it is a story that we hear a lot, right? It's like a story that's told a lot about how far a mother would go for her child. Which brings me to the question, did you know that the original idea for this movie was about a father and a son?
It wouldn't have worked.
It's a great choice to make it about a mother, I think. It adds something to the film. Maybe it adds Jodie Foster, but like...
I think that is...
No, but I think because it ties into this narrative that already exists about mothers in particular. It's not about... that's not a father thing. you know, that element of I have this strong bond and I have to like save my
Even
helpless
though
child.
one of my favorite movies growing up is about a father going to great lengths to save his son, because it was
Yeah.
the day after tomorrow, where the guy just like go in an
And it's great.
Antarctic
Yeah.
then there is a great dad. Go
All
on an
you need is
Antarctic expedition
Dennis
for
Quaid
weeks.
and Jodie Foster as parents in a movie.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. This movie wouldn't have worked without Jodie Foster.
It would have had to have someone else who delivers that kind of
Yeah.
performance, which is not it's Nicolas Cage.
Oh, maybe.
I don't think
It
so.
would be a way different movie, though.
I think Nicolas Cage could do it, but I think what we sometimes imagine, like if we think Con Air, as we mentioned before, like, you know, that kind of Nicolas Cage performance would not be great.
No, the Nicolas Cage that we saw the other day in the movie.
We watched Guarding Tess,
Yeah.
where he's a bodyguard. Yeah, a little more subdued, a little more. He's got a little bit more of a sincere center, but at the same time, there's a comedic slant to it. That's the problem, right? Like we think of Nicolas Cage as a bit of a funny guy. Like even the performance, like Con Air isn't necessarily a joke performance, but there's still something funny about it. Nicolas Cage is great, and he could do this. But when I say Nicolas Cage, people don't think of that kind of performance. Like The Weatherman, for example, is like more character acting, or like World Trade Center, where he plays a
I
real
haven't seen it
person.
yet.
Like that one is about a real event, and he plays an actual person that lived. So he, like
and-
you can't go crazy with that.
Did the person die before he knew that Nicolas Cage was impersonating him?
I think he might be in the movie
Oh my gosh! So it's like
at the end, like he shows up.
imagine that one day people come to your apartment and say, "Hey, Nicolas Cage is gonna play you in a movie."
Yeah. Anyway, I think we talked about Nicolas Cage a bit too much for a movie that has nothing to do with him.
But I was saying that Jodie Foster is a national treasure, so it's kind of I was asking for it.
Next episode's movie is unfortunately not National Treasure, nor does it have Jodie Foster or Nicolas Cage. But it does have Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan, and it's Rush Hour 2.
Oh,
Yeah. Rush Hour 2, it's from 2001. I think it's directed by Brett Ratner, and we are gonna watch it and discuss. But that's for 2 weeks from now. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
bye.